sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight,
criminal gangs that are running this trade, making a fortune putting people in those boats, and we have to take those gangs down.
Keir Starmer promised to smash the gangs, but I'll shortly deliver a bombshell GB News exclusive that should raise alarm bells across the nation. The safety of our country is at risk. Does the government care? Does Sir Keir Starmer care? Is anyone listening? The country needs answers. Also tonight...
What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So...
Brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
So the system... No, actually, no.
The Conservatives should have sorted that crisis out. Now their would-be leader says they've nothing to answer for when it comes to legal migration either. Also tonight...
One note of caution, always be careful. It's important to check all the sources. They might not be giving you the full picture.
He told you to be careful. You should have listened. Disgraced former BBC star Huw Edwards is plunged into further disrepute tonight with fresh allegations. I'll also have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages with tonight's panel. Writer and broadcaster Nina Miskov, former newspaper editor Neil Wallace and journalist and commentator Aidan McGee. The small boats crisis just turned nuclear. Next. Now your news with Sophia Wensler.
And thank you. Good evening. I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 9 o'clock. A fire at Somerset House in central London has been contained after around 125 firefighters were called to tackle the blaze. Priceless artworks, including a Van Gogh painting, have not been damaged, and all the public are safe after the fire ripped through the roof of the historic building earlier. Somerset House will remain closed until further notice as an investigation into the fire that damaged the roof is conducted. In Ireland, a teenage boy has appeared in court charged over the stabbing of an army chaplain outside Renmore Barracks. A 16-year-old boy who cannot be named due to his age has been remanded in custody. GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White has more.
This short court hearing gave us the firmest indication yet of an apparent terrorist motivation to this attack outside the Irish Army barracks on Thursday evening. The suspect, a 16-year-old boy, according to the court, appeared to have a radical Islamist mindset and possess material linked to the Islamic State terror group. The victim, Father Paul Murphy, was returning to the barracks in his car when he was confronted and stabbed multiple times. Security cameras recorded 20 separate stabbing movements. He suffered multiple deep lacerations. The teenager has been remanded back into custody.
In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war, described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. The MSP has been stripped of the party whip following the social media post. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. In other news, it's reported the former newsreader Huw Edwards is now accused of sexually assaulting a 27-year-old man in a West End club after sending explicit text messages. This follows earlier revelations that the 62-year-old admitted receiving child sex images and videos. The alleged victim claims Edwards, who continued despite being asked to stop, was brazenly aggressive and got off on the risk of getting caught. It's also alleged in the Daily Mail and the Sun newspaper the former BBC star threatened to kill anyone who looked at the man, whom he described as his possession. And anyone travelling to an African country affected by a new strain of Mpox is being urged to get vaccinated. Fresh advice has been issued by the European Centre for Disease and Prevention and Control after the virus emerged in the Congo. More than 500 people have died on the continent so far this year. Sweden's recorded its first case, while Pakistan's trying to establish whether a person there is affected. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Hope you're well at home. It's been 6 weeks since Labour took government while pledging to end the small boats crisis. But tonight, I can exclusively reveal that after another bumper load of small boat channel crossings today, more than 5,500 illegal migrants have now arrived in Britain since Keir Starmer's government swept to power on July the 4th. At least 9 small boats made the perilous journey across the channel today, containing 450 undocumented migrants from the continent and beyond. The grim total for the year so far is 19,000. Let's be clear, we've no idea who these people are, where they came from, or what their intentions are while in Britain. So Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, promised to smash the gangs by setting up a border command unit. He scrapped the Rwanda plan. He's allowed 100,000 illegal migrants to apply for asylum. And his deputy, Angela Rayner, has warned Brits that every borough in the UK must take their, quote, fair share of illegal migrants in their communities. This is a national emergency. The safety of our nation is at risk, and failure to get a grip of this crisis is only encouraging even more death and horror in the Channel. Tonight, I ask, does the government care? Does Sir Keir Starmer care? Is anyone listening? The country needs answers. Let's cross live now to GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White, who's been keeping tabs on today's grim milestone. Mark, this is a rather chilling development, I guess, since Labour took over. They promised to smash the gangs. They scrapped Rwanda. There's been nothing to replace it. And now, today, we hit 5,500 and 19,000 for the year. What's going on with our country, Mark?
Yes, sadly, it's not an unexpected development. If anything, actually, there are probably a slightly fewer coming across than we would have expected now that we're in the height of summer. But there have been some days where it's been a bit windy in the Channel, including this week. So I was in Dover earlier in the week on the cliff top there reporting on another milestone that 5,000 migrants had crossed the Channel illegally since Labour came to power. And then we had 2 or 3 days of windy weather, and it's only now, this weekend, that things have calmed down enough to allow more boats to come. And sure enough, we had just after 11 o'clock this morning, the Border Force vessel Ranger coming in with 50-odd migrants. It returned again with another 40 migrants. Then the Border Force vessel Defender was in as well with 135 migrants on board. And so it continued throughout the day with our producer down in Dover estimating that at least 9 small boats came into UK waters carrying more than 450 people, taking the total for the year to now more than 19,000, and of course that milestone as well to 5,500 since Labour came to power, promising to smash the gangs. They scrapped the Rwanda deal on the first day in office. It was, according to Sir Keir Starmer, a gimmick. Instead, what he wants to do is go after the people smugglers. But that's going to take some time. They haven't even managed to appoint a new senior officer in charge of this new border security command, and that's over 6 weeks since Labour came to power. So they've got some way to go to achieve this goal of supposedly smashing the gangs. And while they don't do that, then all of the time when the weather improves, we'll get boat after boatload coming to the UK.
Mark, is this a national security risk? How does it present itself when it comes to the safety of our country and the great British public?
It's undoubtedly a national security risk. Security sources have told me in the past that they are very concerned that individuals with extremist links have undoubtedly crossed the English Channel. Some they know about, others that they don't know about. And of course, add to that the process of throwing identity documents into the English Channel, as they're told to do by the people smuggling gangs. It makes identifying those individuals that much more difficult. And then just add the security concerns around the general tension that it's bringing to the nation. Now, the government, those in authority, don't like to talk about this in the wake of the riots that we've seen, but there is a correlation. There is a tension in communities right across the country by mass migration, but in particular by the illegal immigration across the Channel, by those then claiming asylum and being housed in hundreds of hotels right across the country. There is barely a community in the country that hasn't seen a local hotel requisitioned by the Home Office for use by migrants, and that brings with it tensions, and until that's properly addressed, those tensions are not going to be alleviated.
Yeah, of course, and Angela Rayner, as I mentioned, saying that every borough in the UK will be taking their fair share of migrants, whether they like it or not. Just briefly and finally, Mark, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this question, but do you have any idea on the demographics or the profile of the 400-odd people who arrived today?
I can almost certainly tell you that at least 85% of them will be young males, because that is the pattern we've had since 2018, since this crisis began. In terms of countries, well, they're from Iran and Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, increasingly some from Vietnam and China. But those main countries that I listed before, those countries where it's deemed too dangerous to actually return these people to, is where most come from.
OK, Mark White, our Home and Security editor, thank you very much for that rather chilling update. Thank you. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel tonight. Writer and broadcaster Nina Miskoff, former newspaper editor Neil Wallace, and the journalist and broadcaster Aidan McGee. Good evening to you all. Bear with me whilst I jog myself over here. Nina, let's start with you. It feels to me like, well, it's a fact actually, GBNews is the only mainstream broadcaster or media entity that seems to be following this national crisis so intently. We have someone down in Dover day in, day out, monitoring the crossings, counting how many people are there. Why does it feel like nobody else cares about this?
Everybody cares about the situation. Everybody cares about it. But some people aren't doing it in such an inflammatory manner. Not everyone who comes to our shores is an economic migrant or a terrorist. Many of them are refugees because...
Hang on a minute. Are you saying anything I said then was inflammatory?
I think that the fact that you keep hyping it up, that these people could be dangerous, you know, that it makes it seems like we're being flooded with people who are going to be of a danger to people in this country. The fact of the matter, you said the 500 people arrived today. That doesn't surprise me in the least. The weather's fabulous. If you'd said to me in the middle of winter that it was, you know, when there's storms and snow falling, that there were 500, then I'd think that.
Well, does that make it OK then? Just because
no,
the sun's out,
doesn't make
fine.
it. No, everybody understands this is a big problem. It's not just a big national problem; it's a big international problem, and should be treated as such. But you cannot berate Keir Starmer 6 weeks down the track when he's been very busy for not having done anything.
I'm sorry.
You cannot berate him. You can. The thing is, you cannot just suddenly set up an entire system.
He rebranded this existing unit of the Border Force Command and put some bows and whistles on it, And then he's not even hired a boss for it.
Presumably, they want to get... Listen, let me just, before we go any further, I don't vote Labour. I didn't vote Labour. So, although I'm thrilled that the Tories are out and Keir Starmer, a grown-up, is in, I am not an apologist for Keir Starmer.
Did you say the grown-ups are in?
I absolutely do say that. Well, I think you would call Keir Starmer a grown-up. He's boring enough to be a grown-up. So, you know, why not?
Yeah, OK. Neil, what do you make of this? And Nina's saying that it's not right to suggest that any of these people could be a potential risk to the public safety.
I'm not saying any of these people. I'm saying you're implying that all of them are.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, well, you implied that a great majority of them. You were saying they're all...
Look, let's just be a bit realistic about that. That guy, Mark White, is a brilliant reporter. I've known him for years. I've followed him for years.
Yeah.
One of the vital things he said in that broadcast is 85% of those who were landed today, as there were yesterday and the day before, were young men. They are not fleeing families. They are not people with a long history of persecution. Many of them will come from countries that have nothing to do with Great Britain. Now, we have historic ties with all variety of countries around the world. Most of these migrants are not, these illegal migrants are not from this country. And what we're not missing here, it's so easy to say you're being inflammatory. The problem is that those people who are absolutely wrong to riot, absolutely, it's quite right that they get sent to jail for 5-6 years. Totally agree with all of that. But you know what? Nobody's listening to them. Keir Starmer made all this fuss about this. It was one of his 5 big pledges. My big border unit. I'm going to have it ready to go. Bang. But Nina...
He's only had 6 weeks and he's...
No, but that's nonsense. With respect, Nina...
nonsense. You cannot...
With respect, Nina, can I just finish?
Fully formed. Go ahead.
The point is, he has had an open track to government for months. So the woman, Sue Gray, who is his right-hand man, as it were, right, he's had in place for almost a year. So if this is one of your big things, what you do is you put these people in place, you line them up ready to come. And he's not done it because all Keir Starmer ever does is talk for headlines, and he doesn't do anything.
Knows it's a problem. Everybody
apart from
knows
give
it's a
pay
problem.
rises.
This is a side problem anyway. 5,000 doesn't touch the sides. I mean, you're talking of net migration now of 685,000 people now. Most of them will end up not working, and I'll give you an example. I actually have direct contact. Yeah, I think two-thirds will end up not working. We don't know what they're going to be doing.
That's also legal migration.
Legal migration is what I'm talking about. Yeah. Also, look, I rent a lot of these people, right?
By the Tory government.
I'll give you. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. The students come to me, they bring their families over. I'll give you one example. I've got one guy who rents off me. He's claiming universal credit of £435 a month because he can't afford through his Deliveroo job to pay his wages. So, yes, OK, these big multinational companies are getting away with paying their staff a pittance, but it's the state who are paying me to house them.
Aidan, am I being inflammatory by suggesting some of these people, 85%, as Mark White alluded to, of fighting-age males, young, fit, strapping men coming to Britain? Am I being inflammatory? I
don't think you're being...
By the way, let me make clear, but Nina, before you chime in, throwing their passports in the water, throwing their mobile phones in the water, not knowing who they are.
I understand all of that, but saying that you're implying that 85% are potential terrorists. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
No,
young, strapping men.
He's not saying that. No, he's not saying that. What he is saying is we don't know what they are.
Well, exactly.
Now, I'm quite happy for people to enter this country if I say I check them out. I look at them, I think, yeah, I want them into my house. But what the problem is they are coming here pretending to be one thing and being something else. Now, actually, Aidan touched on something very, very important here. Legal migration, which, incidentally, the Tory government did a huge clampdown on in the last year.
But they set it up themselves.
They did set it up.
They did. It was Boris Johnson who encouraged the students.
Yeah, he also, Neil...
Actually, the real guy was a guy called Tony Blair, who, if you remember, to throw open all the borders of the
But he also made it.
Said only 12,000 people would come to the country.
It's the same crisis, but slightly two different strands of it. Legal migration, everybody's cocked up over the past, well, since Tony Blair. It was tens of thousands, negative sometimes pre-Blair, and now it's the hundreds of thousands. It's a joke. But my issue tonight is these hundreds, daily almost, of undocumented men coming to Britain. It's a security risk. And Nina, I just don't understand how you can't be a little bit concerned that we don't know who they are or where they're going.
Of course I am concerned. Everybody is concerned, but you cannot talk about these people because you're othering them. You're making.
Well, how would you like us to describe them?
You can call them migrants. You can talk them.
Well, no, because they're not migrants. They're illegal migrants.
Well, they are.
They are here illegally.
And I don't think you're being inflammatory.
People are legal in the international law. They are legally allowed to travel through safe countries to the countries they want to go to. To go to the country they want to go to. Now, look. In 2019, how many people came across in boats? Do you know that?
In 19, probably not as many.
20,000.
Yeah.
Under 2,000, 1,850. So this has all happened on the Conservative watch and since Brexit.
You keep trying to blame the Tories. I have no love for the Tories. You're saying it as if it's some dig at me. I don't care about the Tories.
Since Brexit. Because you have to be able to return people, we need a system where people can be processed in other countries, processed in their own country, processed in France. Rwanda was indeed a gimmick. It was an absolute joke.
Well,
and it's cost 700 million.
Well, the other countries, the EU itself is now exploring that with African countries. Italy in particular is forging the way, trying to find safe third countries. They're simply following a way to deal with an intractable problem.
I don't think you're being inflammatory, Ben. But also, you cannot expect any Prime Minister, whether he has the will or not, to do anything in 6 weeks. It's just not realistic.
OK, good stuff. Thank you, panel. We'll be back shortly. The Home Office have said tonight the new government is taking steps to boost our border security, setting up a new border security command, which will bring together our intelligence and enforcement agencies, equipped with new counter-terror-style powers and hundreds of personnel stationed in the UK and overseas to smash the criminal gangs, making millions in profit. Great stuff. Hope you get a move on. Coming up, Priti Patel is fighting Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Mel Stride and, of course, Tom Tugendhat to be crowned the next Conservative leader. But has she just blown it with that rather tone-deaf answer on immigration? We'll play that full clip shortly. Also tonight, Harry and Meghan's immense security detail in Colombia revealed. Helicopters, drones, 14 police cars and a flurry of vans. The question begs, who is paying for it all? But up next, more on our GB News exclusive on the migrant crisis with Boris Johnson's former immigration minister, Kevin Foster. And Kevin is going to go head-to-head with Nina on this debate as well. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain? And they're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll your own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll your own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. It's time now for our head-to-head. And let's start first by speaking with former Tory Immigration Minister Kevin Foster, who served under Boris Johnson's government. Kevin, good evening. Thanks for joining me. What do you make of this GB News exclusive tonight, the grim milestone, actually, that 5,500 small boat arrivals have arrived in Britain since Labour took power? 19,000 so far this year, and 400 odd today alone. What do you make of this?
Well, sadly, it's not a surprise, Ben. And I suspect it will get a lot worse as the summer continues. You see what Labour did when they first day one, they abolished the Rwanda scheme, which was the option for removal to a safe third country of those arriving via a small boat who could not be sent for various reasons back to their country of origin, or the safe and democratic country they've just left, i.e. France, because of a refusal to accept returns there. And secondly, talking about effective, fast processing, better words, fancy words for rubber stamping a lot of approvals. It's not a surprise that people think it would be worthwhile getting in a boat and crossing the channel.
OK, Kevin, I'm not going to let you off the hook. Of course, Boris Johnson was in power between 2019 and 2022. What have you got to say for yourself and your party and your government in your contribution to this mess?
Well, I think what we say, Ben, is first we saw the emergence of the small boats trend. Partly as there was crackdowns on other ways of coming in to the UK. Secondly, we started to look for innovative solutions, and that's partly where the issues around Rwanda came up, because you have this dilemma of what you do with those you turn down, or those who've come, in some cases, actually had lawful status, actually living in the European Union, of a European Union country, came to the UK to then claim asylum, but the country they've left won't take them back. The country of origin is a country, shall we say, for example, Syria or Eritrea, a country either that will refuse to accept returns, or a country where clearly we are very unlikely to get a hearing from the regime there about what we do. And we based it very much at learning from Greece and Australia. Now, we face all sorts of barriers in our way to doing so, but that was the drive we had. And you can see some of the impacts, for example, with the Albania arranged, which we credit where due to Robert Jenrick for the work that he did on that one under Rishi Sunak's administration, where we could get a deal with the country of origin, we could fast process and get people back to their home country. And of course, that's the key. Where do you send people? Because if you turn people down, but you've got no route of return or nowhere to actually send them, then inevitably you end up stuck with them.
Kevin, I'll just ask you about the Tory leadership race in one sec, but you just mentioned you looked at Greece and Australia. Australia, of course, physically turned the boats back. They put migrants in humane lifeboat-style vessels. They turned them back to offshore processing sites, and Tony Abbott won election overnight. And you know what? The small boats stopped. So if you say that your government at the time looked at Australia, why didn't you just try and enact that?
Well, certainly in terms of the Australian territorial waters, they have a slight advantage of the fact that there is international waters between them and some of the countries that were the source, whereas, of course, in the Channel, there is no gap between UK and French territorial waters. And France was always very clear it would not, under any circumstances, allow us to turn boats back, i.e. deploy them into their waters. But even then, that still isn't the core of it. The core is you could actually have with a returns agreement. Mr. Macron may one day want to rethink whether the chaos he sees in the Pas de Calais is really a good outcome for French citizens because of this ability to cross the Channel. But certainly it was things we looked at, although it is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. What we actually really need to look at is where could we return people? Once you pick them up in the sea, what can you do with them? The ideal scenario would be a returns agreement with France. But given the constant non to that idea, the alternative was then looking at third countries in exactly the same scenario as Australia had with some of the countries that it wanted to return people to who would refuse. And as part of a wider approach, because it's not just about the third processing, Australia similarly changed its law. And we also looked at Greece with things like accommodation centres, where, again, not just put housing people in, for example, hotels, but it's moving towards accommodation centres. So it's a whole system approach. It's not just one thing that solved the Australian problem. As you say, Tony Abbott got strong support for it.
OK, let's bring in writer and broadcaster Nina Miskoff now to debate you on this, Kevin. Kevin, Nina reckons I'm being inflammatory for even raising the point that we don't know who these people are and they are potentially dangerous. The question is, are they dangerous? Am I being inflammatory by raising this point?
Yeah, I think you're right, Ben, to point out the cohort who arrives via small boats. If you then compare them to the cohort that arrives via resettlement routes or, for example, the Ukrainian routes. For example, the Ukrainian routes were mostly dominated by women and children. Our resettlement routes are mostly dominated by families. Small boats, as you pointed out, are mostly dominated by single men aged 18 to 40, a very different cohort of people, and where you would say, particularly given they've come through a number of safe countries, are more looking for the economic opportunity of coming to the United Kingdom rather than being able to apply for asylum just somewhere safe, i.e. what would be wrong with applying for asylum in France, if that was your main concern?
Nina?
I think I'm right, Kevin, in saying that when the Ukrainian situation happened, you suggested via a tweet that they should apply under the seasonal workers' visas rather than we should take them in as refugees. I mean, that caused such a fuss that you took that down, but it goes to showing your humanity in these situations. Very big scheme
for families, to people to come here from Ukraine.
I was just going to say that goes towards your humanity, which people must have in a situation like this. Of course, it's a terrible situation, and there are always going to be economic migrants. But there are ways of dealing with this, and hopefully Keir Starmer is setting up a system. You need to have people processed in other countries rather than have them desperate to come here. You need to be able to process them once they get here quickly. And in fact, Kevin, I assume that you're part of a Home Office which quite frankly wasn't fit for purpose. And the backlog of people building up was ridiculous. It just was so inefficient. There was just no real... And as for the Rwanda scheme, it was complete pie in the sky, because as far as I understand it, there were never any more than 300 hotel rooms, and once you got the first plane load off the ground, if you'd got the first plane load off the ground and filled those rooms, and then what would happen? That wouldn't deal with the thousands coming per year.
It was meant to be a deterrent, Nina, was it not, Kevin?
Well, first, the prospect of it initially had an impact. Secondly, it wasn't going to be capped just at 300. At 300, there would have been the prospect to do more. Of course, initially you work with any country in terms of a deal, and as we say, we've seen the Australian experience with Nehru in terms of the impact that's had on their numbers. And again, we have to have a position that if you just fast process someone, but you've got nowhere to remove someone to who you refuse. Well, we all know what comes next. And as for what Mr. Starmer says, the smash the gangs is a soundbite. It's not a real solution.
Well, how do you know that? How do you know that, Kevin? How do you know that?
Well, if you think the police and the NCA have been doing nothing on this area,
no, I understand that, but it's not been a cohesive, coordinated effort. And quite frankly, since Brexit, our relationship with Europe is not conducive to them cooperating with us, and certainly France. Boris Johnson's relationship with the French was just ridiculous. There was no way they were going to help us. And you know that after any divorce, people will go at each other.
It's still as strong as it's ever been. It's in our mutual interests to work in terms of sharing intelligence and working with them. We've been I'm not kidding. I was responsible for the transition arrangements and working closely with our teams in the Home Office to do that. But I will say I'm not really sure what the difference is between a border security command and a small boats operational command.
Well,
which
hopefully you'll have somebody more efficient.
Objects.
I was going to say Brexit also meant that the Dublin Agreement, which allowed us to remove people to the country from where they came, once Brexit happened, that was not part of the deal. So Brexit screwed that up.
The Dublin protocols didn't allow you to bring them back to their original home country. In theory, you could take them back to the country where they first entered the EU, but given you couldn't do returns to key entry countries like Greece and Italy, that rather made it a somewhat pointless thing. No one was going to convert to the EU into Austria, for example.
We're fast running out of time, unfortunately. Nina, can I ask you something? Would you take this 400-odd people who came today, the illegal migrants into Dover, would you take a couple of them in your house?
I don't have a house. I have a flat. It is a one-bedroom flat with a small balcony, and there is no room for anybody else. If anybody wants to perch in a window box, they're perfectly welcome.
OK, so if you had a spare bedroom or two, you'd be happy taking an unknown 20-year-old male. You don't know who he is, where he's from, what his name is. You'd be happy with that.
Situation.
Pardon?
A completely hypothetical situation. I have no idea if I had a bigger house, if I was...
It seems strange that you're so happy to accuse me of being inflammatory by raising concern that we don't know who these people are, yet you're not so quick to answer whether you'd have one in your house if you had space.
As I say, I have no room in my flat.
But if you did have space,
and that's not the same thing. And I am very aware that a lot of what has happened in this country in the last month has been exacerbated by inflammatory language, and I think we should all be very careful of the words that we choose and the way we use them.
Nina, I've been very polite and moderate tonight. I've merely raised the latest influx of unknown, undocumented men coming to Britain. People have a right to know who these people are. They have a right to raise their concerns. They have a right to raise their fears without being called racist or far-right thugs or any of that. But Kevin Foster, thank you for joining us tonight. Nina Miskov, thank you as well. You'll be back soon with the panel. Right, that was spicy. Coming up, Priti Patel is fighting Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Mel Stride and Tom Tugendhat to be crowned the next Conservative leader. Do any of those guys take your pick? But has she just blown it with that rather tone-deaf answer on immigration to our political editor, Christopher Hope? That full clip coming shortly. But next, Harry and Meghan's immense security detail in Colombia revealed. Helicopters, drones, 14 police cars and a flurry of vans to boot. So, who's paying for it all? Nick Pisa, the senior global reporter at the Mail Online, is in the ground in Colombia for us next. He's live. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the next 24 hours, high pressure largely holding on across the UK, keeping it fairly dry and settled. A few showers still in the flow, and we can see that on the bigger picture. Generally low pressure to the north, high pressure extending in from the southwest, keeping most weather systems at bay for the rest of the weekend. Through this evening and overnight, largely dry across much of the country. A few showers still possible across parts of Scotland, northern England, down into Wales and the West Country. But most places dry as we head through the night, and towns and cities generally holding up in double figures, but in the countryside dipping down to around 7 or 8 degrees. So a bit of a fresh start to Sunday, but there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Showers, though, possible in a few places, most prevalent across central and northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures here first thing Sunday morning around 10 to 12 Celsius, so on the fresh side, best of the sunshine towards Aberdeenshire. Northern Ireland, Northern England also a few showers possible, largely in the west. The east generally dry, and 1 or 2 showers for Wales and the West Country. Parts of the Midlands over into East Anglia, South East England, plenty of sunshine to start Sunday. Through the day, well, that high pressure generally keeps things dry and settled for many parts. More in the way of sunny spells for parts of Wales, western parts of England, Northern Ireland, that we saw quite a cloudy picture on Saturday. A few showers still possible across Scotland, but they do start to ease later in the day. Breezy here, temperatures on the cool side, 15, 16 Celsius. In the sunshine, rising into the low 20s, highs around 25 Celsius for London. Then it's all changed slowly through Monday as a weather system moves in from the Atlantic. Outbreaks of rain pushing in across Northern Ireland. The winds picking up through the Irish Sea as well. Gales developing later on in the day. Best of the sunshine holding on across the southeast. Temperatures here around 25 or 26 Celsius and staying unsettled right through much of the week. See you soon.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. I was about to say we're going to cross to Bogota in Colombia to speak with the Mail Online's senior global reporter on the Harry and Meghan faux royal tour. But apparently Nick's been, I don't know, kidnapped by some cartels or something because he's having some trouble connecting with us. So we're going to go back to our panel now, Nina, Neil and Ada McGee, and we're just going to talk about Harry and Meghan. Apparently, reports today say that in Colombia, they're being protected by a so-called ring of steel. So we've got drones, we've got helicopters, a convoy of 14 cars and vans. Apparently, the government and the police deployed armoured vehicles as well, while armed officers and soldiers patrolled the roads too. So, first of all, Nina, who is paying for this, do you reckon? It seems like a cushy PR job for Colombia.
Well, it's not the British taxpayer, put it that way. I think
Thank goodness for that.
Hurrah!
I would imagine that the Colombian government is paying for it. I mean, this is sort of the security that they must be accustomed to. South America's I mean, I'm not being flippant, but many, many years ago, in 1981, I went to Argentina at the invitation of Freddie Mercury when Queen played their first gigs. And when we arrived...
Hang on a minute, Freddie Mercury invited you to Argentina?
Yes.
Were you friends with him?
Yes.
What was he like? I mean, we should do a whole new segment on that. The bombshell revelation.
No, he was lovely. He was very, very shy. He was
Amazing.
A very, very shy man.
Lovely.
I was known as the Queen of Pop on The Sun, and that's my job.
Yeah,
I went round the world talking to rock stars. So anyway, I went to South America at Freddie's invitation, and when we landed, the airport shut down every announcement, and it played only Queen music. So people must have been, missing their flights. Anyway, when we came out of the airport, we were guarded. This is, by this convoy of motorcycle and great big trucks with sort of holes outside with guns poking through. So this is South America, and so I would imagine it's not very much different in Colombia decades later.
I think they were thinking of shooting you, Nick.
Possibly, yes.
But this is the significant point of all this, really, isn't it? Why are they there? What connection has Britain got, particularly with Colombia? And don't forget, Prince Harry refuses to bring his children to meet their grandfather, King Charles, because he says the lack of security here means it's too dangerous to come here.
Yeah.
And yet there he is in Colombia. And of course, let's not forget that Colombia has been riven by a vicious civil war for years. And there was an attempt to settle it several years ago, but there is a rising tide of extreme left-wing agrarian revolution going on there. But they've chosen to go there. Now, what could it be? Could it be all the headlines? Could it be all the TV footage? Could it be them simply, yet again, trying to force their faces onto the British newspapers?
I doubt.
Neil,
that's the last thing they want. They don't want to be. They hate that. That's why
privacy.
That's why Meghan won't come here.
Nina, are you? I'm sorry to ask. Are you being sarcastic there? Or are you joking?
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering that, actually.
No.
Are you being serious?
No, I'm not being serious.
Right.
Of course, I am being.
Oh, you are being serious.
I am being serious. This is ridiculous. You know, you're saying that, you know, why would they go there? You know, British don't go. You know, Harry is not a part of the British royal family in Britain.
It's a huge...
He's making his own way there, and if he wasn't...
But why is it doing?
It's a huge deflectionary tactic on behalf of the government and the Vice President there, let's face it. I mean, like, she's under pressure there because she's flying by helicopter everywhere, she's being... I mean, to be fair, she has been a target of assassinations, all the rest of it, although that's what they say. We have no way of kind of verifying that. But, look, I think it probably works well for both parties. It shows the government in a good light. Look who we're pressing the flesh with. And if Harry and Meghan are serious about advancing their projects that they're meant to be mindful of and concerned about, then I think that, you know, maybe it suits their end as well. It's all good PR. That's all it can amount to.
Yeah,
just a PR stunt.
Well, I find it rather ironic. They're talking about misinformation online and the truth online. I mean, you're not going to listen to people who, in the Oprah Winfrey interview, committed or told at least, 12 lies about...
That's not true. That is not true. 12 lies. Tell me the 12 lies, then.
Okay, well, off the top of my head, they said that they were married...
It was 3 years ago.
They said they were married in a private ceremony before their wedding. They said Archie was denied a title because of his race. Absolute... BS. They
didn't say that. They didn't say.
Yes,
they said they didn't say he was denied a title because of his race. What they did say was that a member of the royal family had asked about the colour.
No, that's a separate. That's
a separate thing.
Speculated about the colour of his skin.
But they were two separate incidents.
But that's just pure mischief making, surely. I mean, if you're going to go through that, surely you have to give us a bit of a leaning as to who, or give us an idea as to who said that.
Well, because they were protecting them. Because
protecting them?
They protect. They didn't come out with the names. The names.
Why say it at all?
The names.
Why say it at all?
So well, because quite a shocking thing. If you're a woman and you're pregnant, you're being pressurised on all sides. You're having problems, with your emotional well-being, and somebody speculates about the colour of the child that you're about to produce.
If true.
I think we.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that phrase? Wonderful phrase. I think it was the Queen's. Recollections may differ.
Didn't it come out later?
I've just googled some because I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Meghan said she had her passport taken away, which was nonsense because she went to New York for that 500k baby shower. She said that she wasn't. Her mental health woes were ignored, which was nonsense.
That's not that. You have no idea whether it's nonsense or not. You have absolutely no idea.
What she was, of course, what's always important to remember this, they try to parallel Princess Diana, who was a sweet, naive country girl. Meghan Markle was a TV star from America who had been previously married. She wasn't some naive kid coming into this. It's a nonsense.
She saw an opportunity. She saw an opportunity in him, didn't she?
Why are you vilifying?
We've got to move on,
unfortunately.
She was filling her boots.
She wasn't naive because Meghan, before she even met Harry, went to London to meet the Showbiz editor of the Mail on Sunday on a Kensington rooftop bar, begged for a column inch in the Showbiz spread.
Just an inch?
Linking her with Ashley Cole. And then years later, she says to ITV's Tom Bradbury, "Oh, I'm so not... I didn't know what the British tabloids were." Anyway, coming up, Jimmy Savile, Jonathan King, Stuart Hall, Chris Denning, Rolf Harris, and now grim new allegations tonight, again, against the BBC's Huw Edwards. Just what is going on at the corporation? But next, who's your pick for the next Conservative leader? Has Prissy blown her chances after that interview with Chopper? I'll play you that full clip in just a sec. And by the way, beyond your pick for Tory leader, do you even care? Are the Tories relevant anymore? This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, almost 70% of 18 to 25-year-olds, we don't know whether that's men or women, but they say that women shouldn't breastfeed in public. 19% would even go as far as labelling it disgusting.
Well, only a quarter of Brits say that women shouldn't have to cover up when they're breastfeeding. So clearly there is a big debate here and one to get to the bottom of. And to do so, we're joined by parenting journalist Annette Kellu. Really good to see you this morning, Annette.
Really good to see you.
Why is this stigma still existing in our society?
I think we've got a case here going on of double standards. I don't know about you, but I live near a park, OK? One little hint of sun The men get completely naked. Honestly, you've never seen anything like it. The bodies are out, all different shapes and sizes. So why is it not OK for a woman to feed her baby? You know, we've got this whole thing. They're OK to be naked doing what they want. Why can't a woman just feed her baby? Why is it shameful in 2024? And it's interesting what you say about the 18 to 25-year-olds, because I really want to know, are they men or women? Because I feel like they'd be men.
I was going to say, have you got a hunch? Have you got a suspicion?
Yes, I have. And I think as well, they're thinking of them as sexy time, you know? And I feel like they're not... Well, maybe that's because they're bombarded with images and they see things like that they're seeing it in that context. But it's really not. It's feeding the baby. It's simple. Shouldn't be shameful.
But do you think for men it's like they can't see the difference? There's so much porn in society, isn't there, that breasts are sexualised and seen as this sexual object and not actually for their main primary purpose, which is actually feeding a child.
Immediate association.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they can't.
And you can't see that they could have two functions.
Absolutely. And to them as well, I feel like they see it, and on the other side of it, they think like, ooh, mummy, and that brings up weird feelings for them, maybe.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are dropping imminently. But first, the Tory leadership race is well underway. But former Home Secretary Priti Patel dropped jaws in an exclusive interview with GB News political editor Christopher Hope after seemingly shrugging off the Tories' dire record on immigration.
Net migration has gone about 2 million over 4 years. You know, I don't want to say that was too much. I mean, many would say it is too much.
But you can put context to it. And I think it's too lazy, if I may say so. I think it's really quite sloppy just to go around, you know, the merry-go-round on this, in the sense that students, we shut down. Don't forget, during the pandemic, our borders were effectively closed. There was no travel. What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
Brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
So the system, no, actually, no.
No?
You have to, again, which students brought their families? Look at the categories and the criteria. I do think, you know, put the facts and the context around this. And one final point to make, points-based system, the brightest and the best. I was the one that put a skills criteria to it. You don't come to our country through the points-based system unless you're sponsored, unless you're paying thousands of pounds for your visa, the immigration health surcharge, and you're sponsored. These are people that come here and work and contribute to our country and our tax base.
Well, there we go. Well, that comes as a damning Ipsos poll showed 3 in 5 Brits don't care who becomes the next Tory leader, laying bare a high level of public apathy over the party's latest leadership battle. Priti Patel, of course, is fighting Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Mel Stride and Tom Tugendhat to be crowned the next Conservative leader. But has she just blown it with that rather tone-deaf answer on immigration? Joining me now is former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Good evening, Charlie.
Good evening.
Nice to have your presence this evening.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, when was the last time you spoke to your old boss, Michael Gove?
Not that long ago. He actually, the last time we spoke, he messaged me when I was on this channel to say very well done.
Oh,
in fact, he followed me on and we had a nice chat down the line.
And have you asked him who he wants to be the next leader of your party?
I haven't, and I wouldn't ask because he will, I'm sure, make up his own mind, just as we all would.
OK, well, if you were going to punt on it, who would he be going for? I mean, he was a massive Kemi backer before, wasn't he?
I think he supported Kemi in the last leadership, but who knows? I will try and get in touch with him and try and get you an answer.
OK, a very political answer. I can see you've learned from the best there from your old boss. Look, on the topic of Priti Patel, did she blow it there with that answer? Because lots of the Tory base online, lots of our viewers are saying Pretty, surprisingly, just doesn't get it. Like lots of your Tory cohorts, she doesn't get it. Why not just say, even if you believe that, why not just say, yeah, we got it wrong, we broke our election promises, I've got a plan for the future. But she just seemed to say it wasn't a problem. You know, who cares?
Well, I think in answering that question for Pretty, you need to be absolutely clear. And there was a little bit of confusion there, but because overall, the Tory party, after election, manifesto has pledged to bring the numbers of migration down into this country. That clearly hasn't happened. Now, there are reasons for that, and a lot of what Pretty was saying is part of the reason. So, you can choose to exclude students from those migration numbers. What she didn't mention there is obviously the influx of people coming from Ukraine, which is absolutely right.
But there is, even without Hong Kong and Ukraine, there'd still be hundreds of thousands.
Exactly. So there is the context that Pretty was talking about, but fundamentally, you've got to grip the issue, which is to say, yes, we got it wrong. The numbers were far too high. There's a reason why those numbers did creep up, and she was right to articulate when she was Home Secretary, bringing in the points-based system to make sure that you have the brightest and the best that come into this country.
But she didn't say we got it wrong, so did she make a mistake by not doing that?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult for 4 of the 6 contenders, actually, because 2 of them were former Home Secretaries, that's Pretty and James Cleverly, 2 out of the 4. The remaining 2, Dominic Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick, Immigration Minister and Security Minister, both in the Home Office, so they would have had a conversation about all things going on in the Home Office. So they've all got to be able to justify what the issues were, what went wrong in the past, why those numbers didn't come down, what their plan is for the future, and how they're going to bring those numbers down.
OK, one-word answer. Who's your pick for the leader?
I'm currently undecided. I'm undecided. Undecided.
Okay. All right, former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are on the way imminently. The panel are riled and ready to get stuck in. And as 5 people, including medics, were arrested over the death of actor Matthew Perry, what does it say about Hollywood's drug culture? And, of course, the latest revelations on BBC presenter Huw Edwards. Stay with us.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the next 24 hours, high pressure largely holding on across the UK, keeping it fairly dry and settled. A few showers still in the flow, and we can see that on the bigger picture. Generally low pressure to the north, high pressure extending in from the southwest, keeping most weather systems at bay for the rest of the weekend. Through this evening and overnight, largely dry across much of the country. A few showers still possible across parts of Scotland, northern England, down into Wales and the West Country. But most places dry as we head through the night, and towns and cities generally holding up in double figures, but in the countryside dipping down to around 7 or 8 degrees. So a bit of a fresh start to Sunday, but there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Showers, though, possible in a few places, most prevalent across central and northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures here first thing Sunday morning around 10 to 12 Celsius, so on the fresh side, best of the sunshine towards Aberdeenshire. Northern Ireland, Northern England also a few showers possible, largely in the west, the east generally dry, and 1 or 2 showers for Wales and the West Country. Parts of the Midlands over into East Anglia, South East England, plenty of sunshine to start Sunday. Through the day, well, that high pressure generally keeps things dry and settled for many parts. More in the way of sunny spells for parts of Wales, western parts of England, Northern Ireland, that we saw quite a cloudy picture on Saturday. A few showers still possible across Scotland, but they do start to ease later in the day. Breezy here, temperatures on the cool side, 15, 16 Celsius. In the sunshine, rising into the low 20s, highs around 25 Celsius for London. Then it's all changed slowly through Monday as a weather system moves in from the Atlantic. Outbreaks of rain pushing in across Northern Ireland. The winds picking up through the Irish Sea as well. Gales developing later on in the day. Best of the sunshine holding on across the southeast. Temperatures here around 25 or 26 Celsius and staying unsettled right through much of the week. See you soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British giveaway. It didn't cost much to enter, But of course, if you're not in, you can't win. And here I am, having won £20,000, and that's tax-free. So I'm rather pleased I did it.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight.
One note of caution, always be careful. It's important to check all the sources. They might not be giving you the full picture.
Yeah, you said it. Disgraced former BBC presenter Huw Edwards is plunged into more scandal tonight as damning new accusations come out over his predatory behaviour. Just how did the BBC let him run riot under their watch? And
at least 9 small boats came into UK waters, carrying more than 450 people, taking the total for the year to now more than 19,000, and of course that milestone as well to 5,500 since Labour came to power.
Criminal gangs that are running this trade, making a fortune putting people in those boats, and we have to take those gangs down.
well, he talks the talk, doesn't he? But it's a national emergency. GB News exclusively revealed in the last hour that more than 5,500 small boat arrivals have now landed in Britain under our new Labour government. Does anyone care? Do they care? Are they listening? Also, as 5 people, including medics, are arrested over the death of beloved actor Matthew Perry, what does it say about Hollywood's drug culture? And could Taylor Swift save the UK economy? Kinsey Schofield joins us live from Los Angeles. I'll have all of the first newspaper front pages hot off the press, and my panel are riled and ready to get stuck in. Writer and broadcaster Nina Miskoff, former newspaper editor Neil Wallace, and journalist and commentator Aidan McGee. And how much would you pay for a bacon sarnie, porridge and a cup of coffee? The Huw Edwards saga takes another dark turn. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler from the GB Newsroom. At 10 o'clock,
Your top story this hour. A 7.2 magnitude earthquake has struck off the east coast of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula with a tsunami warning in place. The quake struck at 8:10 p.m. UK time, and it could be felt 100 kilometres from the epicentre. That's according to the US Geological Survey. The US National Tsunami Warning Centre has said there's a tsunami threat for Russian coastal towns from the quake. A fire at Somerset House in central London has been contained after around 125 firefighters were called to tackle the blaze. Priceless artworks, including a Van Gogh painting, have not been damaged, and all public are safe after the fire ripped through the roof of the historic building earlier. Somerset House will remain closed until further notice as an investigation into the fire that damaged the roof is conducted. In Ireland, a teenage boy has appeared in court charged over the stabbing of an army chaplain outside Renmore Barracks. A 16-year-old boy who cannot be named due to his age has been remanded in custody. GBNews' Home and Security Editor Mark White has more.
This short court hearing gave us the firmest indication yet of an apparent terrorist motivation to this attack outside the Irish Army barracks on Thursday evening. The suspect, a 16-year-old boy, according to the court, appeared to have a radical Islamist mindset and possess material linked to the Islamic State terror group. The victim, Father Paul Murphy, was returning to the barracks in his car when he was confronted and stabbed multiple times. Security cameras recorded 20 separate stabbing movements. He suffered multiple deep lacerations. The teenager has been remanded back into custody.
And it's reported that former newsreader Huw Edwards is now accused of sexually assaulting a 27-year-old man in a West End club after sending explicit text messages. This follows earlier revelations that the 62-year-old admitted receiving child sex images and videos. The alleged victim claims Edwards, who continued despite being asked to stop, was brazenly aggressive and got off on the risk of getting caught. It's also alleged in the Daily Mail and the Sun newspaper the former BBC star threatened to kill anyone who looked at the man whom he described as his possession. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The Huw Edwards scandal has deepened tonight, and it begs the question how this man was ever allowed to run riot under the BBC's watch. It's now been reported the disgraced former Beeb star allegedly sexually assaulted a 27-year-old man in the toilets of a posh club after sending him sordid text messages. It's alleged Edwards, 62, met up with a man behind his wife's back before groping him in a West End members club. The man, aged 27 at the time, told the Daily Mail, "One of the most shocking things was how brazenly aggressive he was. I think he got off on the fact that he was a powerful figure and that he could get away with grabbing me in the toilets like that." Before the meeting, Edwards allegedly bragged, "You're getting assaulted in the Ivy. I'm so effing horny, it's indecent." Edwards, who pled guilty to accessing a litany of vile child sex abuse images this month, also said he felt, quote, very possessive about the 27-year-old, warning he would kill anyone who looked at him. The alleged victim described the encounter as overwhelmingly predatory and said he broke off contact with Edwards shortly afterwards. So look, the Edwards scandal is the latest in a long line of paedophile sagas dating back decades to have marred the BBC's reputation. Jimmy Savile, Jonathan King, Stuart Hall, Chris Denning, Rolf Harris, and now, again tonight, Huw Edwards. Has the BBC got a problem? Let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Writer and broadcaster Nina Miskov, former newspaper editor and media consultant Neil Wallace, and journalist and commentator Aidan McGee. Neil, I'll start with you as the former Fleet Street man. Nina, you, of course, the Queen of Fleet Street. Neil, what do you make of this? Has the BBC got a problem?
I think they've got a particular kind of problem, which is that they worship their stars, and their stars can do whatever they like. And so they protect them at all costs. Those stars know that, and because They are the face of the biggest media organisation in Britain, arguably the world.
156 million reached worldwide, I believe, the BBC. It's huge, absolutely enormous.
So it makes them feel very powerful, and they are. And eventually they start believing they can walk on water. And the truth is they can walk on water. That litany of names you just read out, how did all of those people get away with it so long? And how did this one? And incidentally, this is an interesting story today. This will not be the only instance like this. There will be many more, because people who behave like that do not actually do it as a one-off.
Hang on a minute, Neil. So you think there's more potential predators in the BBC?
No,
More stories about Huw Edwards.
There will be more stories about Huw Edwards that are exactly like that. Do I believe there's other predators at the BBC? I think there are people who've abused their position at the BBC, yes.
It's not dissimilar to sport. If you're, in football, Neil would know he covered sport in his papers down the years, and often footballers crept onto the news pages. If you're delivering results on the pitch, you'll be amazed what you can be forgiven for. And it's not just a BBC problem. We've all worked in organisations where the people at the top are delivering, they're performing well, and so their excesses, that we might put it in inverted commas, are just tolerated that little bit more, in fact, in a big way. And also you have a series of acolytes around them. They're feeding off the fame of that particular individual. Yes, they know the key to their success is hanging on their coattails. We see it all the time. There's a chain of command, there's a hierarchy, and you have to absorb yourself in that to get to the top, and people will do whatever they can. It's a brave person, Ben, to stick their neck on the line when you're down there and say, this is wrong, because you know, unless you're really stupid, that you're going to be out the door pretty quickly. And that's how the whole culture proliferates.
Well, in the BBC's defence, of course, they say they didn't know what Huw Edwards was up to, of course. They would never have known. And they're now, Nina, trying to claw back not just the £200,000 he was paid in licence fee cash between November and April when he was arrested, but, of course, this £300,000 a year pension that he's going to be getting. Tim Davie has said he'll be getting that pension regardless of whether he's banged up for 10 years or not, because they can't do anything about it.
I think that's completely wrong. And to be fair to the BBC, although why I should be, I don't know idea, ITV also worship their stars. Anybody who makes them money is a golden goose, and they do. I
think it's the same in most organisations.
Exactly. But the things, and also, we're talking about Jimmy Savile. He fooled not only the BBC, he fooled Margaret Thatcher, he fooled
Prince Charles.
Absolutely. So he fooled everybody. So it's not just let's go for the BBC because they are particularly susceptible to this. These men are particularly good at, they're
manipulators.
There's Savile. Not sure that's the man I wanted to be looking at on a Saturday night with his.
Well, I've met him, and
Savile.
Yes, I met him. He was I thought he was just totally creepy. I just didn't.
Yeah, I met him too.
Just creepy.
But so many people say that their experiences of Savile were akin to yours. Louis Theroux said that he knew at some point he was a wrong 'un. Loads of other people have.
I didn't know he was a wrong 'un. I just thought he was a creepy.
It's hindsight, though. It's hindsight, though, as well. You don't necessarily. You can put yourself in that position and say, "Oh, yeah, I have my suspicions," but did you really? I'm not sure.
I think there's the truth in that. I think you can meet people and are uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable people, and then years later, maybe a story like Savile will come out and you think, that makes sense. People just make you feel uncomfortable.
I interviewed Rolf Harris once. I sat down with him for an hour, and I have to say, I didn't feel any kind of, oh, God, this man's a predator of any kind, or there was nothing at all remote.
They need to have some charm about them if they're going to get people to do things they don't want to do.
He had enormous charm. And I once sat next to him at a charity dinner. I think there was his wife the other side. And felt there was nothing untoward about him.
Apparently, Vanessa Feltz, as far as I remember, said that she felt something was slightly off with Rolf Harris at one point.
Oh.
But, as you said, in hindsight, it's a wonderful.
Of course it is.
I just wonder, the BBC, of course, they've said that they had no idea this was going on under Huw Edwards. But, if more of this happens in the coming years at the BBC, do we need some sort of inquiry or, because this is essentially taxpayer money funding this organisation, and their track record thus far isn't good.
The problem is that, we've all worked in office situations, and people start to get a bit of a reputation if they're creepy. And there's something untoward about them. The problem with big organisations and big stars in big organisations is there is a fear, as Aidan quite rightly mentioned, there is a culture to protect them and excuse them and to be fearful of rocking the boat. You hear it all the time. You read about it in law firms. You've seen it in, who was it? A major figure in McDonald's, wasn't it, in America, had to resign because it turned out he was having affairs with junior employees.
In the position of that person at the bottom, you're tossing away your career, because if you're asking the person in the overarching position of the organisation to make a choice between somebody down here or someone up there, we both know who they're going to go for. We all know they're going to go for.
And the thing is, it starts kind of gradually, because when the career takes off and somebody's a success, and if they have little foibles, like they only want,
certain makeup artists.
Or they only want somebody to
floor managers,
coffee in this particular mug, little tiny things. And then it gets bigger and bigger, so that everything that they want,
demanding,
that's going to make them perform, to make the company money, is tolerated somehow, short, obviously, of people. But I wonder how many people at the BBC must have known of Huw Edwards' proclivities, that he was, more interested in young men than his wife.
Well, I've spoken to people who worked closely with Huw Edwards as recently as this week, and they said it was always obvious that he liked young men, but as far as the paedophilia aspect is concerned, no, they had no idea.
But it was interesting that when this story started to break, there's a very, I give her due, a very brave presenter at the BBC called Victoria Derbyshire, who pursued on Newsnight, of which she was the main presenter. And she knew of incidents, and she pursued that story with one of the reporters because they had heard the rumours, they had heard the undercurrents, and they were able to follow it, and they put together actually a very important piece of television journalism that helped bring him down and helped expose him eventually.
But that's the difference, though, isn't it? It took somebody on sort of aligned to him or his kind of level in the organisation to bring him down. Nobody at the bottom is going to do that.
I remember that. It was in the early days when the Sun was still kind of drip-feeding information. They couldn't maybe get past the legalities of the story, so they were doing things sort of half-baked,
circumspect,
getting in a bit of a tangle for it. And then, of course, Victoria Derbyshire did the piece on Newsnight. I think it was about the reports or complaints from a young staff member.
Young staff members too.
Yeah. And I've got to say, props, again, I've said it before on this channel in recent weeks, props to the Sun for their reporting, props to Victoria Derbyshire.
Victoria Derbyshire is a wonderful
courage.
woman. She is so strong, and she was treated badly by the BBC before the pandemic. Her morning show was dumped, and she was pretty much washed up, as it were. Come the pandemic, they brought her back, and she was an absolute stalwart.
And you know what? In the face of a absolute litany of lefty supporters, John Sopel, other people, Owen Jones, saying whatever happens behind closed doors is up to Huw Edwards. It doesn't matter. This is something about nothing. And actually, they've been left with egg on their face. Their judgment of characters.
And your earlier point was 100% right, and I praise you for it. The Sun showed immense courage in the current media atmosphere, in the current media ecosystem, if you like, to have the courage to pursue the story and not let it go, and to face up all of the barrage of big BBC figures, big media figures, trying to damage their story and beat them down. And they wouldn't give in, and full praise to them.
Yep, it's the Sun what won it. Yeah, you go. Nina, Neil, Aidan, thank you very much. You'll be back with us very shortly with the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They'll be on the way at 10:30. And also, coming up, we'll bring you tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, as 5 people, including medics, are arrested over the death of beloved actor Matthew Perry, what does it say about Hollywood's drug culture? And could Taylor Swift save the UK economy? Kinsey Schofield joins us live from Los Angeles. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tea.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
We haven't talked about Meghan for a very long time.
Well, this is about suicidal ideations, which apparently Meghan Markle says she was having. It's not our place to question whether that is true or not. But she's saying this, Matt, isn't she, so that we can all be aware of online harms and therefore what? We can't have anonymity online anymore?
Yeah, I think it's a bit... I mean, obviously, you know, her personal story is very affecting, and I think it will help people, you know, to hear the issues. Because we hear issues around mental health, but we don't often hear in detail about suicidal ideation, which is that people having thoughts about suicide, not necessarily having a detailed plan to do it. So I think that's important. But then if you're going to say it's all about online harms, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you want to change? What rules do you want to introduce or you know, or alter? And I think that's the issue, that it doesn't actually go anywhere.
So, because she's given us a talk in America, she's supporting a charity, all very noble. So the suicidal... It was because of what she was reading about herself online. Is that what she said?
Well, I think she thinks it's because of the whole structure, really, of what she went through.
What did she go through?
About herself. Well, you know, she thinks she's been through trial by tabloids. Others would disagree.
Oh, that again.
Emma.
That again.
I don't often agree with Meghan Markle. In fact, I never agree with Meghan Markle. Good. But actually, on this, I'm reaching a point where I think the anonymity online and the abuse and the vitriol and the violence and the threats that you can fling at people online is actually really getting too much. And I think that it is dangerous. And I do think that when you receive really hateful, blasphemous messages from people, and it's always the be kind, the kind of hate mob, the kind of, well, we know who we're talking about. They're almost 99.9% anonymous, and I think we do need to look at that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. It's time for US News now with the Showbiz and royal reporter Kinsey Schofield. This week, 5 people have been charged for their involvement in the drug-related death of Friends star Matthew Perry. The actor died in LA last October, and a post-mortem examination found a high concentration of horse tranquilizer ketamine in his blood. Police say a criminal network took advantage of his addiction issues. Kinsey, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, I think it is where you are. What does this say about Hollywood's drug culture?
I mean, I think that unfortunately it hasn't changed since we lost Michael Jackson. You know, you look at Michael Jackson's death, his accidental overdose in 2009. It was ruled a homicide because the drugs were administered by his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, at the time to help Jackson sleep. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sent to prison for 4 years. And now we have 2 out of the 5 charged in Matthew Perry's death. Medical doctors. This is being described as an underground ring because 2 of those physicians were forging prescriptions and swapping meds. Then we had someone named the Ketamine Queen who deals with only high-profile celebrity clients and uses her home in North Hollywood to store, package, and redistribute narcotics. There was a middleman arrested and then Perry's personal assistant. And unlike the Jackson case, it was Perry's personal assistant of 25 years who gave him that deadly dose of ketamine, 1 of 3 injections that day.
Wow. Yeah, that is astonishing. It did remind me of Michael Jackson's case. I'm a massive Jacko fan and, had some memories. So in terms of Matthew Perry, I don't agree with this, but some people are saying, look, he was a multi-millionaire Hollywood star. Surely he should be taking responsibility for his own actions. Why is everyone else getting the blame? He is the one who ultimately decided to sniff or inject the ketamine, however he did it.
It was he was injected. I think that he was also telling us he was sober. So at the time of his death, a lot of people like myself were hesitant to say this could be a drug overdose. We were very concerned about our language. I will tell you that Matthew Perry's stepfather, his name is Keith Morrison, and he has been a Dateline correspondent, which is a crime investigation program beyond popular here in the States for as long as I've been alive, probably. Keith has been very close to law enforcement. And if I'm being honest with you, I know a lot of people are looking at this saying he's getting special treatment because he's a celebrity, but I also think he's getting special treatment because of his, stepfather. And I understand law enforcement has worked very closely with his stepfather, Keith, for many years now. And I think that they did this as in an effort to bring him some peace and his family some peace.
Kinsey, I don't know if you saw this clip doing the rounds online in the wake of Matthew's death, but it was a clip of Matthew talking about one of his favourite quotes from fellow Hollywood star Jim Carrey, actually, who said, "I pray and I hope for everybody to one day achieve their dreams and, make as much money as they can and achieve whatever they want to achieve, because they'll realise soon afterwards that it doesn't solve any of the pain inside. It doesn't solve your problems." And Matthew Perry was sat there saying, I had untold amounts of money, I had the best life ever, but I still had these internal problems which none of that could solve.
Well, it also doesn't buy you very good friends, Ben, because his personal assistant of 25 years, I imagine if somebody's around you that long, wouldn't you want to trust and hope that they have your best interest at heart? And we know that this is the individual that gave him that last dose that ultimately killed him. And he has copped a plea deal. So he is going to work with prosecutors to ensure that the two that have pled not guilty have a very tough case against them. But money does not buy you happiness, and it does not buy you good friends.
Indeed. Have we heard anything from Matthew's friends, co-stars, Jennifer Aniston or anyone like that?
Not yet. I imagine that they're going to be very careful with how they speak about this until maybe we see these people taken to court in October, because they don't want to be accused of swaying a jury or a decision maker in any way, shape or form.
OK, sad news. We'll keep a keen eye on that. Should we move over to Taylor Swift? She's, of course, in the UK at the moment on her Eras tour. She's at Wembley. I think she concludes maybe tomorrow night. 4 dates here. Apparently, she's giving us a pretty decent boost to the UK economy. Do you reckon that she actually has that much of an impact economically in the countries that she goes to?
I think she does. I mean, I know that we considered her a superstar here in the States when the Eras tour was here. And then when she loses places, like over terror threats, you see these thousands of people take to the streets, devastated over it, singing her songs. I mean, all of these people are buying costumes, not only tickets, they're buying costumes, they're DIYing crazy costumes, they're buying friendship bracelets, they're buying DIY friendship bracelets. She is a force all of her own, financially. I also think just culturally, and it's a great time to see her right now, because some of the ticket prices have dropped as drastically as 90%. When I was there, when Prince William was there, they were over £700 a seat. Right now, they're about £400 a seat. So if you can afford it, she's going to put on a great show. I take advantage of it.
That's the kind of figure I pay for Arsenal tickets these days. Look, I don't know if you're a Swiftie, Kinsey, but I've always said, look, I respect her for doing her thing and hustling and being a success, but I don't get it. Can you explain to me what her X factor is? Why so many people love and adore her?
Well, I can tell you I'm more of a Swiftie when she's not talking politics. I'm much more into her when she isn't getting political. I think it's that she's a girl's girl. The music she writes, you can relate to. I've cried over, I can give you the names of the men I've cried over to some of her songs, specific songs. And I just think she's ambitious. She's a hard worker. And she shows you that if you work really hard, your dreams can come true. And she's done it. She's not Kim Kardashian. And you know what I mean when I say that. She's done it in an ethical way. And she's done it through hard work and legitimate talent. And I think that is something to be admired.
Yeah, you mentioned her sort of sometimes wading in on politics. Of course, Donald Trump, actually right now, as we speak, is talking to supporters in Pennsylvania, and that is the state where he was shot last month and arguably nearly died. I mean, can you imagine the state of the world now? There we are, live pictures from Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump is speaking at a rally. It's the first time, as I said, he's returned to that state since the assassination attempt. This week, he's kind of pushed back against his advisors and even people like Nikki Haley, who have said, you need to stop the attacks on Kamala Harris. You need to stop questioning her race, whether she's black or not. You need to stop calling her dumb. And it does feel that he's potentially fumbling the ball in the last quarter here. I mean, he was untouchable after that assassination attempt. But, Kinsey, he's come out tonight or last night and said, I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing. Is he wise to be going against his advisors?
Yeah, I mean, he says they want me to be nice, but they're not being nice to me. They want to put me in prison. Trump's strength is to focus on the economy and how the cost of living was much more comfortable under a Trump administration. We weren't at war with anyone, and our borders, they were much better protected under the Trump administration. I do think Kamala is fair game. And when I was tuning in and watching this a few minutes ago, he was tearing into her Time magazine cover. He has to be careful. I don't think he should fixate on the personal attacks. But I do think if he focuses on numbers and money and how our groceries and gas, I think that's a much more beneficial to his campaign.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a political mastermind, but as I said, he was literally untouchable in the days after that assassination attempt. And he could have, even if he didn't believe it, I argue, he could have just said, do you know what, guys, it's really humbled me. I'm gonna work for all of America. I'm going to unite everyone and just kind of blag it for 2 or 3 months until the election. But, Donald being Donald, he's just ploughed on ahead. Just a very quick answer to this. Who's going to win in November, Kinsey?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I don't know. I Taylor Swift.
Of course. Kinsey Schofield, live from LA. Thank you for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
Coming up, how much would you pay for a bacon sarnie, a cup of porridge and a coffee? I'll tell you the full reason for that question in just a tick. I'll also bring you tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass shortly. But next, a first look at Sunday's newspaper front pages, and my panel are riled and ready to get stuck in. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the next 24 hours, high pressure largely holding on across the UK, keeping it fairly dry and settled. A few showers still in the flow, and we can see that on the bigger picture. Generally low pressure to the north, high pressure extending in from the southwest, keeping most weather systems at bay for the rest of the weekend. Through this evening and overnight, largely dry across much of the country. A few showers still possible across parts of Scotland, northern England, down into Wales and the West Country. But most places dry as we head through the night, and towns and cities generally holding up in double figures. But in the countryside, dipping down to around 7 or 8 degrees. So a bit of a fresh start to Sunday, but there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Showers, though, possible in a few places, most prevalent across central and northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures here first thing Sunday morning around 10 to 12 Celsius, so on the fresh side, best of the sunshine towards Aberdeenshire. Northern Ireland, Northern England also a few showers possible, largely in the west. The east generally dry, and 1 or 2 showers for Wales and the West Country. Parts of the Midlands over into East Anglia, South East England, plenty of sunshine to start Sunday. Through the day, well, that high pressure generally keeps things dry and settled for many parts. More in the way of sunny spells for parts of Wales, western parts of England, Northern Ireland that saw quite a cloudy picture on Saturday. A few showers still possible across Scotland, but they do start to ease later in the day. Breezy here, temperatures on the cool side, 15, 16 Celsius. In the sunshine, rising into the low 20s, highs around 25 Celsius for London. Then it's all changed slowly through Monday as a weather system moves in from the Atlantic. Outbreaks of rain pushing in across Northern Ireland. The winds picking up through the Irish Sea as well. Gales developing later on in the day. Best of the sunshine holding on across the southeast. Temperatures here around 25 or 26 Celsius and staying unsettled right through much of the week. See you soon.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. Time now for the first of tomorrow's front pages. Let's start with The Independent. Patients face crisis shortages of vital NHS medication. The health service issues warning over the supplies of 9 key drugs for treatments such as schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD, etc., etc. The Mail on Sunday. £14 billion bill for Keir's shabby union cave-in. His capitulation to his union paymasters. The full bill has been revealed. And the Sunday Express. How many OAPs will freeze this winter? Rachel Reeves has buried a report, apparently, revealing the devastating impact of axing winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners. I really like this story, panel. Nina, Neil, Aidan, welcome back. £14 billion bill for Keir's shabby union cave-in. So apparently the pay rises to junior doctors, the train drivers, GPs are coming next, probably radiographers and paramedics, whoever else. It's Christmas, isn't it, for public sector pay workers? £14 billion, Nina Miskov.
How can you call a payment, a pay rise to a doctor, to a teacher, shabby?
It depends if they're worth it.
But the thing is, the pay rises that the teachers are getting are from the pay advisory boards. They're the same. This is an independent board that said this is what they should get. Now, why have these?
I'd love to know how many teachers are on the pay advisory board.
Oh, for heaven's sake! Look, you know, you cannot be clapping for nurses and doctors during a pandemic and then suddenly say they're evil, you know, horned union, whatever.
I don't think anyone's saying they're evil, though, are they?
No, but grasping on something. Everybody deserves a decent wage for a decent day's pay. We've had an economic crisis. We've had rampant inflation. People need to be paid fairly. And Keir Starmer has come in, as far as I understand it, to wipe the slate, to start things on a good basis, to build from there. And if you're going to have continuing strikes, continuing whinging.
But he's been accused tonight, Keir Starmer, of treating the taxpayer like a cash machine.
Oh, that's ridiculous. This is the Mail's typical.
But do you not see? Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, do you not think that it sets a bad precedent as soon as you give out that money to one organisation, another one comes back, and it sends a message out there that striking works? I thought we got away from that at the end of the 70s.
So hang on, Nina.
Yeah.
Other people, please.
Of course.
So one of the first things that happened when the government announced that it was going to give the 14% pay rise to ASLEF, that's going to take them from an average of 60,000 a year to 69,000 a year. Immediately, what happened was that the other rail unions came in and said, well, we want the same. Now, what has triggered here is the classic domino effect. So you have, hang on, Nina. Hang on. So you've got a situation where the junior doctors, who are on an average of, doesn't matter what that minimum is, it's a token. The average pay of a junior doctor is in the 80-odd thousand. They're being given 20%. Now, what does that say to the rest of people in the economy? It says, get on this gravy train. And that's where this 14 billion, and the point being, Nina, what you have to understand is they have ruled out all the ways that you can raise a lot of money in tax. All the big tax revenues, they've already said in the general election, they will not raise. So they're going to come after pensioners. One of the other papers here, pensioners, the winter fuel payments. And I'm lucky. I get it, but I can afford not to have it.
So can
but I know pensioners who can't afford to have it.
Aidan, they're going to come after people like you, my friend, landlords, people with investments, with properties. Capital gains tax is probably in October going to be hiked up to reflect
it will
income tax. I think,
and it will cause stagnation in the market because it means that people like me are less likely to sell.
Are you happy with that?
It's not a pressing concern for me right now because I've no plans to sell anything. But you never know. Anything you could be.
I think it just reflects the total envy.
But if Rachel Reeves says she needs to raise £20 million, it's not me. It's not the Mail. Sorry, billion. Rachel Reeves says she needs to raise £20 billion. You tell me, Nina, where's she going to get it from?
I have no idea.
Exactly.
I'm not an economist.
It's gonna,
let's wait.
So you can't possibly say it's fine.
Listen, no, I'm not saying.
If you don't know whether
I'm not.
You don't say that in your own.
So you don't know whether I think it's fine or not.
Give Nina a say.
I think it is the only thing that can happen after these 14 years where the Tories have raped and pillaged their way through the country. They have stripped this country out, filling their own pockets and the pockets of their cronies, instead of running the country for the sake and the good of the people who live here.
Well, hang on. Labour have just been accused of hiring a civil servant who was previously one of their big donors too. So you can't.
The Conservatives have been funded by Russians, by God knows who else.
No, they're not. Who? Give an example. Funded by Russians.
Oh, listen. What about
which
what about
Russians?
Lebedev? Has he not donated money to the Conservative Party?
He was a Tory donor. I mean, he doesn't give money to the government. He was a Conservative Party donor.
What government was in power? It was the Tory government, wasn't it?
So who funds Labour? All these trade unions who are getting 14 billion.
Not all of them. Not all of them.
Didn't ASLEF granted 100 grand, didn't they?
180,000.
Do the nurses deserve a pay rise?
Do the nurses deserve a pay rise? Well, it depends what level you start to look at.
Do nurses deserve a pay rise? Do doctors deserve a pay rise?
But we're talking 20%. Nina, we're talking 20% here. And if we're talking 20%...
£90,000 a year.
Not nurses.
No, doctors. You mentioned doctors.
Okay.
How about train drivers? £69,000 a year. Are they poor?
Let's take the case.
Are they poor?
Let's take the case of the train drivers then. Okay. Are you happy to get on a train driven by some 23-year-old who's hungover and had?
Well, they probably do. That probably happens anyway. It probably happens anyway.
No, just look. A responsible job that takes a lot of training.
They're not poor.
Nina, 20% increase. Look,
one at a time.
I don't know if you get. I don't know anyone who gets a 20% increase without getting a promotion. Just to have that slapped on the end of your salary, I do think it's uncomfortable for taxpayers. I really do.
Why would you get on a plane that was piloted by an amateur?
But it probably happens. No one says it's an amateur, though, is there?
You're just saying you need to get a certain standard of person to drive a train.
But it's the same. We're not talking about bringing new people into it. It's existing ones being.
Time on this. I'm not sure about hungover train drivers at 23 years old. I'm not sure
Standard.
how that would happen. Anyway, a Refugees Are Welcome protest, at a Refugees Are Welcome protest. Some of those attending, I asked this, a similar question to you, Nina, actually. Some of those attending were asked if they would house a refugee. This is what they said.
I just noticed your placard saying refugees welcome here. Yes. I'm just wondering if you'd like to go down on a list saying you're willing to take the refugees into your home.
Of course not. Only problem is I rent.
You rent?
Yeah.
Maybe an issue?
Yeah, because they've got, well...
Well, if I had any space, I would.
If you had any space.
It wouldn't be a nice place to bring them because it's a bit overcrowded.
Right.
But yes.
Sorry, okay.
Rental.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
Someone else's job.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
You can't take one.
I don't have a space.
You don't have the space.
Yeah, there we go. When push comes to shove, would you take a migrant in your home?
Well, I offer you a famous person who stood up with her husband and said, we will take refugees in our home. Her name is Yvette Cooper, who happens to be the Home Secretary. And she and her husband, who, what was he called?
Ed Balls.
Ed Balls.
Ed Balls, who was one of the big Brown government cabinet ministers. They said, we will take refugees in our home. Gosh. It never happened. Fantasy.
But other people would do it. But the thing is, whether you would take a refugee in your own home, whether you have space or not, is irrelevant.
No, it's not.
Refugees should be processed, put to work, pay taxes, pay their own...
OK, so where should they go? If not in your home, where should they live?
Well, what, they live in a flat or a...
But there aren't any. There's Brits who don't have accommodation.
Well, that's why we need to build more houses.
OK, but
you can't just build more houses.
Aidan, let me just get this out with Nina. So there aren't houses. There's a critical housing shortage.
There are enough houses just to squeeze people in. There are enough houses.
What kind of life or nation is that? Just cramming bodies into homes?
Because the last government has... I take this back to Margaret Thatcher. I take this back to Margaret
Medical
Thatcher.
services.
I take this back to
Hospitals.
Margaret Thatcher.
Nina, I agree.
Who promoted the sale of council flats and then never
Nina, we're going off track. I agree. Previous government...
It wasn't meant to be replaced.
Tories included, haven't built enough homes. So that we agree on. So with that considered, why would you allow these people to come in en masse?
They will be processed, and then if they are...
To go where?
To come here. You can't say that... You cannot say that we cannot take any more people. If we can take 600,000 supposed legal migrants, we can take boat people too.
Aidan, would you take a migrant in your home?
No, not enough space. No, I've got enough space, but no, I don't want them there. I don't want them in my house. I want other people there. I want loved ones there.
No, I mean, the big issue that goes with it's all very well glibly saying, well, let them all in. But it's not. The point being...
It needs to be strategised if it's going to happen.
There are not enough houses. There are not enough houses. There is, more important, actually, there's not enough hospitals. There's not enough GP surgeries.
Schools.
There's not enough schools. There is simply not the infrastructure. And
well, let's look at the legal migrants then. Legal migrants who are putting a strain on the system. Boat people.
Sorry to interrupt. We're fast running out of time because we've got more papers to come. But I just find it fascinating. When we all agree there's not enough housing, people are struggling already.
You can't just keep building, though, Ben. That's the thing. You just can't.
Struggling to get houses. We all agree there's not enough housing. Yes, the Tories are to blame. Yes, previous governments are to blame. We all accept that. So why then, knowing that, would you encourage more and more people to come?
You cannot just put a wall around this island. You cannot do that.
OK, well, where are they going to go?
Absolutely cannot.
We don't.
Nina, let them work. Let them pay taxes.
Two-thirds of the ones here don't work.
OK, we've got to move on. Nina, Neil, Aidan, great stuff. Thank you very much.
No, they don't work.
Because that's been analysed by the government.
OK, ding, ding, round's over. Now, more papers on the way in a minute. And how much would you pay for a bacon sarnie, porridge and a cup of coffee? I'll tell you all about that conundrum in just a tick. Plus, I'll bring you tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. This is Ben Leo Tonight.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, we're joined this morning by the broadcaster Paula London, who thinks we shouldn't allow flexible working, and the founder of Real Mums Club, Chrissy Powell, who thinks that it is an absolutely brilliant idea. Let's start with you, Chrissy, because nobody is suggesting for a minute, are they, that being a parent isn't a job?
Parenting a job itself, but I think flexible working, where it really comes into play, is it provides a gateway for those parents that currently cannot work. It provides them a gateway into the working world. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think every single employer should look into that as an option.
It's a fantastic idea, Chrissy, unless you're an employer. I would have thought you can't get people through sickness, through holiday, through when they want to work and when they don't want to work. Why even bother thinking about working? Why not just get paid for sitting at home doing nothing?
Because flexibility isn't just about term time only contracts. I myself, as a working mum, having a flexible employer, it means that I can still continue my work duties when children are ill. Recently, my daughter had a huge allergic reaction. It resulted into an A&E trip. If that wasn't a flexible employee, it would mean I'd have to have time off. Whether that's paid or unpaid, it can be detrimental to the employer and the employee. So by allowing me to work from home and offering more flexibility, employers offer different time scales. So it doesn't always mean that you have to work a 9 to 5 anymore. It might mean that you're best suited to work later on in the evening and pick up your work that way. I just think it's fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. More front pages have just dropped hot off the press. Let's start with the Sunday Telegraph. Extreme misogyny to be treated as terrorism under this new Labour government. And at the bottom, clapping for the NHS like a national religion is dangerous, says Watchdog. Stop treating it like a cult. Hear, hear. The Sunday Mirror. Kyle Walker, the Man City footballer, ready to hit Lauren with harassment case. Former wife or girlfriend, don't really care. The Sunday Times, don't shoot, we're conscripts, begs the captured Russians. And a nice royal story at the bottom. William wouldn't invite Harry to his coronation, according to friends. Yeah, don't blame him. Don't blame him.
I think William's mean. I think he's entitled, and I think he's complete pain.
Oh, Nina. Say what you really think.
I've heard other people say that.
And I don't think he wants to be king. I think he's trapped.
Oh, OK. Well, look, we're not going to talk about the royals. We're going to talk about Greggs, the bakery, because this morning, long story short, I went into Greggs and I got a bacon sandwich and a coffee and whatever. It was about 7 in the morning. Some guy walked in, looted the top shelf of breakfast goodies and just walked out. And I laughed. I said to the staff, did you see that guy? And they just laughed and said, yeah, we can't do anything about it. Anyway, I put that on Twitter. It went viral. It's had more than 1 million views today and so on and so on. I then followed up with this tweet and I said, well, this haul I got, including a bacon sarnie, some porridge and a coffee, only cost me £5. So for me, it pretty much felt like it was free anyway. I thought it was quite a cheap breakfast. The response, the toxic vitriol I got for that tweet, calling me out of touch, calling me deluded.
Because it was a £5?
Because it was a £5.
What, they thought it was expensive?
Yeah. Bear in mind this is central London. So I want to ask you guys, and you guys at home, gbnews.com/your say, am I out of touch? Am I doing a Lee Anderson there by saying, you know, oh my God, cheap breakfast for a £5?
I think you are, actually, because...
Oh, Nina.
People don't have
Nina.
£5s. People can't afford to buy breakfast out. Never mind, it costs a £5. People can't afford that. You laugh.
I'm somebody who has breakfast out quite often. Usually at Greasy Spoon, crap places, right? But there's no way you can't get anything for a £5. You really can't.
Breakfast in central London. For anyone watching from outside London, I know there's plenty of you, probably the majority. Breakfast in London normally costs about £9, £10, £11. You're paying £4.50 for a coffee. And if you go to Gales, a posh bakery, it's another £3-4 for...
I would imagine...
I agree that as prices go, that is relatively inexpensive. But it's the whole concept of buying breakfast, which you could easily have at home on your... porridge.
But that's cheap as well. That's not cheap either.
Porridge would cost you like 30p a serving. For God's sake,
But Nina, the point is, I wasn't at home with a
Why did you have it before you left home?
Well, I'm not going to get into it. I lived 2 hours away in Brighton and I stayed overnight, but I just wanted a breakfast on the go.
If you'd wanted it in a hotel, it probably would have been 20 quid.
I'm telling you, people can't afford to have breakfast out.
Yeah, but it's not. You're assuming they have it. You're assuming they have that every day.
Well, but do you have it every day?
Porridge?
Yeah.
No, the £5. Your £5 Greggs breakfast every day. You don't,
in London,
do you?
I have to spend more than a £5. Anyway, these people online, I mean, they're a bunch of weirdos, to be honest. They were saying that I was out of touch. What world do I live in? And I just couldn't really...
But there is a difference, I suspect, between out of London and in London.
Yeah.
In London, you go to almost any coffee chain and you would be lucky to get away with a cup of coffee for under £4.
Yeah.
So if you got that haul,
it's almost the price of a pint, isn't it?
You did quite well.
Thank you.
I agree. I agree you did well, but the point that people are making is that people can't afford to waste money on food that they could provide for themselves at home.
OK, I shall not share my breakfast anymore on social media. Time now for tonight's Greatest
Brownie
Britain.
points for porridge, though.
Thank you very much. Time now for tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Nina, your GB nominee, please.
Obviously, Taylor Swift. She's provided so much happiness for over 5 nights to so many young girls and women. She's such a wonderful, wonderful role model. Strong woman, talented, brilliant, and it's a very benign, kind, inclusive atmosphere.
Got it. Have you been to her concert?
No, I couldn't get a ticket.
Saw some punters today, knocking about.
Yeah, all dressed up. Neil, your GB nominee, please.
My Greatest Britain?
Yes.
Right, I'm going to have to look at my phone here to give you this name. His name is Chris Zakiti.
Yeah.
He is the head of the Care Commission, and they are the people who released the report last week into the horrors of the Valdo Carrickane knife massacre.
Yeah.
He's the guy who ran amok in, I think it may have been, it was in Nottingham.
Nottingham, yeah.
And he stabbed a young couple to death. He stabbed, pardon me, a completely innocent guy walking by.
So
he ran over people. What his commission did, however, was to reveal the appalling treatment or lack of treatment he'd had.
Yeah.
8-10 opportunities to lock him up before he was able to kill.
Great. Aidan, your GB nominee.
Not a person, but a great British institution nonetheless. 60 years of Match Today. Tonight it should be on around about now or thereabouts, but it's had controversies over the years.
No,
it's spawned some wonderful. It's spawned some wonderful talent. Des Lynam, Gary Lineker, Mark Lawrenson, Alan Hansen. They've not fiddled with the format too much. It's a rarity in that the ratings have actually gone up over 20 years rather than gone down. 3.8, I think, million per average viewer, and I think it deserves a little bit of a mention.
I used to love Match of the Day. Des Lynam was my man, but unfortunately Lineker is now at the helm. So
25 years of him tonight as well.
So it's not going to be Lineker. It's going to be Taylor Swift today. I admit I really don't get Taylor Swift, or the music side anyway, but there was a review in the Telegraph today saying that, you know, she brings so much love and positivity to young people at a time when, you know, the world is a pretty cruddy place at times. So Taylor Swift is my GB. We've got to be very quick. Who's your Union Jackass nominee? Very quickly, please.
Liz Truss, no sense of humour, storming off a stage at the sight of a lettuce.
I'll leave her alone. Neil?
Oh, come on.
Transport Secretary Louise Haigh, who sanctioned the 14% rise for ASLEF train drivers from 60,000 to 69,000
All right, for some. Aidan?
London Mayor Sadiq Khan wants to impose rent controls in London. According to him, landlords are to blame for everything. No, they're not.
OK. Of course, my Union Jackass is Sadiq Khan. Can't stand the man. I think he's pretty dishonest, and yeah, no more explanation needed. That's it for tonight. We're fast out of time. Thank you guys at home for joining us. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Neil and Aidan. It's been spicy, to say the least. I'll be back tomorrow from 9 p.m. Next up, it's Headliners, and that's after your weather with Greg. Good night. Have a good weekend.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the next 24 hours, high pressure largely holding on across the UK, keeping it fairly dry and settled. A few showers still in the flow, and we can see that on the bigger picture. Generally low pressure to the north, high pressure extending in from the southwest, keeping most weather systems at bay for the rest of the weekend. Through this evening and overnight, largely dry across much of the country. A few showers still possible across parts of Scotland, northern England, down into Wales and the West Country. But most places dry as we head through the night, and towns and cities generally holding up in double figures, but in the countryside dipping down to around 7 or 8 degrees. So a bit of a fresh start to Sunday, but there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Showers, though, possible in a few places, most prevalent across central and northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures here first thing Sunday morning morning, around 10 to 12 Celsius. So on the fresh side, best of the sunshine towards Aberdeenshire. Northern Ireland, Northern England also a few showers possible, largely in the west. The east generally dry, and 1 or 2 showers for Wales and the West Country. Parts of the Midlands over into East Anglia, South East England, plenty of sunshine to start Sunday. Through the day, well, that high pressure generally keeps things dry and settled for many parts. More in the way of sunny spells for parts of Wales, western parts of England, Northern Ireland that saw quite a cloudy picture on Saturday. A few showers still possible across Scotland, but they do start to ease later in the day. Breezy here, temperatures on the cool side, 15, 16 Celsius. In the sunshine, rising into the low 20s, highs around 25 Celsius for London. Then it's all changed slowly through Monday as a weather system moves in from the Atlantic. Outbreaks of rain pushing in across Northern Ireland. The winds picking up through the Irish Sea as well. Gales developing later on in the day. Best of the sunshine holding on across the southeast. Temperatures here around 25 or 26 Celsius and staying unsettled right through much of the week. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours, but time is ticking. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby